Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Buckley, and I'm part of the I-405 Improvement Project Community Outreach Team. Thank you for joining us today for this online discussion. Sorry about the delay. I had a little bit of technical difficulty there. I will be providing a brief update on activities at Fairview and giving you some details about work on the wall along Fairview Road and along the Fairview Road southbound I-405 on-ramp and off-ramp. Then we'll take questions. First, a little housekeeping and a little explanation about the discussion. As I mentioned, I'm going to give you a brief presentation. It'll be followed by a Q&A session. There are two ways to ask questions. You can type it into the chat box, or as you see on the top right there, you can raise your hand to join the conversation. If you choose to join the conversation, we will add you to the presentation room, and you can choose whether to have only audio on or you can have audio and video. There will be a brief period when you raise your hand and ask to join when you're led into the room, where a separate window opens up for you to check your microphone and video. Once we're done with your question, you'll leave the room and the next person will be able to ask a question. Also, it's important after you leave the room, you'll need to click on the big play button to rejoin the webinar. On the other hand, some of you may prefer to just type your question into the chat box. We are also monitoring those questions. I'll respond by repeating the questions and providing an answer. Joining me for this discussion is Nikki Wright. She'll be bringing people into the room and monitoring questions that come in via the chat window. We also have a couple more team members. I've got Joey Fernandez, Asia Stansell, and Anna Finley. They are working behind the scenes to ensure everything goes smoothly. There are a few other items I'd like to highlight as part of this virtual discussion. Under the Files section on the screen, you'll see several PDFs. These include the project fact sheet, our bridge map and fast facts, our Express Lanes FAQ, and the Express Lanes access map. I can talk more about those later. Also, under the offers section, we'll need to publish the offer if we haven't already. That is a link to sign up for project alerts that are specific to the Fairview interchange. Finally, I want to let you know that the meeting is being recorded and will be available at the link provided on the postcard you received. So if you missed something or you know someone who couldn't join us this afternoon, please head over to 405improvement.net/Fairview-webinar. And you can always send us an email and we'll send that link to you as well. So now I'd like to provide a quick status on work at Fairview, and then we'll move into an update on the walls. As you may have noticed, work on the Fairview Bridge itself is stopped, and the contractor is focusing primarily on retaining walls and road work. The major activities on the horizon are placement of precast concrete girders that will form the bottom of the bridge superstructure itself. That's anticipated for late summer. After that, crews will finish constructing the bridge and getting it ready for traffic. So that traffic switch is slated for the end of 2020 right now, and then crews will begin work on the second half of the bridge. That's going to include, of course, demolition and reconstruction. That's slated to begin in early and continue through mid-2021 until the end of next year. So now I want to move a little bit closer to the walls and the wall work. I want to talk a little bit about wall 569, which is the label it has for us. That's the wall that runs parallel to Fairview behind some of your homes, those of you who live on Boston Way. Work began on that wall earlier this year and is expected to be completed in the fall. The current activity is the installation of temporary shoring, and that is basically to create a solid space where they're basically excavating what they call lifts, and so they're excavating portions, horizontal sections of soil, and using soil nails, which are horizontally inserted and then they'll basically put a tieback on that to retain the wall as a temporary retain the dirt, as a temporary method while the wall is being constructed. So that's the soil nail installation excavation that you're seeing right now. The next major activity, and I've talked to a couple of you about this, is pile installation. And the foundation of a portion of the wall, not all of it, but the tallest portions of the wall. This is a pretty tall wall in a lot of places. It's about 28 feet. A portion of that foundation is going to be H-beam piles. These are steel piles. There are 183 of those piles, and they are going to be installed between 25 feet and 70 feet deep. The primary work hours for that is 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. We don't want to do pile driving at night, obviously, because it's even more disruptive to residents than pile driving during the day. There are some support activities that will be conducted at night potentially, although the contractor is very, very aware of the concerns of the community and is trying to minimize night work to the greatest extent possible on this wall. After the pile driving, they'll begin work on the footing of the wall, and they'll use, so things will quiet down a little bit after that. There's concrete work, so they will be forming the location using, wood forms, installing rebar, which is the reinforcement steel, and then placing concrete. Mostly that's day shift work, which is about 7 a.m. again to 4 p.m. Although there are some pours that could be done at night. Depends on if they need to close ramps to do that and things like that. The next step after forming the footing of the wall is they start to backfill it, and then they build the wall up, and then they backfill and bring material in behind the wall. Most of that is meant to be day shift as well, although there may be some delivery of material. And then they will have to do paving on the street side and do the sidewalk and sort of restore all that in there. On your side of the wall, they will be fine grading the slope. They will be making it so it comes down, and then right now I believe they've removed the existing drainage area, the sort of V-ditch, if you will. They'll be restoring that, putting that back in place. So there won't be water coming down the hill right up against property walls there. So that's the essence of that wall. Right now it is scheduled to be completed in the fall. So it continues through the fall. The other walls that I wanted to mention are on the other side, on the southbound off-ramp side. So there are a number of walls on that side, and you may have been hearing some of that activity recently. So as you're exiting Fairview southbound, you're coming up that ramp. On the right side, there is a very large retaining wall. You got to remember, all the ramps are moving, right? They're moving to accommodate the widening. So to properly set that ramp up, and also to raise the ramp to the height of the new bridge, that work requires a retaining wall on the right side of the ramp, and on top of that retaining wall will be a sound wall. Further south, there's also another retaining wall with I don't believe, there is actually a small sound wall on top of that one as well. So that activity is what you've been hearing. We sent a couple of you emails last week and earlier this week about some excavation work that they've been doing at night because they have piles that they're installing there. On that side, it is 147 steel pipe piles that are about 30 to 60 feet in length. They're planning to have that pile driving done by the end of this week. So hopefully that will ease somewhat for you guys. And again, then they, once they have the foundation in place, they do the concrete and the wall forming and build that up. And then that allows them to work on the ramp. And then in addition later, and I believe the work is anticipated for the sound wall portion of it, that is anticipated later this year. But that wall should be finished about the same time that the wall behind Boston Way is finished. A little bit further to the west, if you will, even though it's north on the freeway, is another wall. It's a different type of foundation. These are CIDH pile foundation. That's a little less noisy when it comes to the construction of a CIDH foundation. They drill holes, they auger big holes in the ground, they drop in the steel rebar cage, and they pour concrete in there. That forms the foundation, and they build the base wall on that, and then they form the rest of the wall on top of that. So there are a number of walls that are continuing along the off-ramp, and those are anticipated to be complete between the end of this year and it looks like summer of 2021. So still some work on that side as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the foundation of the wall itself on adjacent to Fairview, behind the homes on Boston Way. I know there were some questions about that. I think Mr. McClave sent us some questions about that. There are a couple of issues related to that. One is you've got a very tight construction zone to work in, and we needed to maintain travel lanes on Fairview behind the new wall. So because of that, and because of an existing buried AT&T duct bank close to the front of the new wall, that constrained the work area, and it required a significant system of temporary support. So a very significant temporary shoring installation, and that will allow us to do the excavation to construct the new wall. So there are a couple of factors that led to the need for a very extensive temporary shoring, and that's a lot of the work that you're seeing now. The design selection for the foundation of the new wall, one of the questions that came in is why are we doing pile driving? Why can't we do something different? You'll note that pile driving was done similarly for this wall back when in 2008, 2009, when the bridge was retrofitted and widened. So it's similar to that. More than one wall type, foundation type was considered during the design process, including what are called shallow spread footings, where you over excavate and you have a spread footing as the base for the wall. You can also do that cast in drilled hole that I mentioned, where you can drill down, place the concrete cages in, the steel cages in there, and then pour the concrete in. That's another way to do it. And then of course the third way is driven piles. So there are some spots where the shallow spread footing will work, but those are on the shorter portions of the wall, not the large 28-foot tall portions. The problem is where the taller portions of the wall are, it's weak soil and it doesn't support a shallow foot spreading. It wouldn't work, it would not support the wall. In addition, you've got shallow groundwater and weak soil conditions that made the use of the cast in drilled hole a type of pile inadvisable. Basically, if you do that, you take a risk that the piles will be affected by the water level. So ultimately, the decision was made to do driven pile, especially for the taller portion of the walls. And that's the same conclusion that the city came to when designing the prior retaining wall. That's really it in terms of the presentation. What I'd like to do now is switch back and talk a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple of slides real quick. I'm going to make this available. Many of you probably already have this information. It's our project contact information. I'm going to start this right now so you can take a look. So if you see, these are all the ways that you can get information about the project. Many of you already know about this. We've discussed, I've spoken with a couple of you, and you contact us via the project helpline or via email. The additional thing that I do want to mention, though, is, as I said at the beginning, I want to encourage you to sign up for Fairview specific information, Fairview specific activities. We'll try to give notice to you guys on Boston and on Charleston and Bismarck and areas there, across the Fairview, on Londonderry, and even across the freeway on off of South Coast Drive. We're trying to keep everybody informed on activities that are going on at Fairview. So we're doing a very specific database to meet those questions and concerns. So that's under the offers tab. And then I want to come back and talk again a little bit about the question and answer period before we launch into that. As I mentioned previously, we have two ways for you to ask questions. You can type it into the chat box, as I mentioned, and Nikki's going to be monitoring those. When they come in, she'll broadcast those to the entire group so you can all see them. I'll repeat the question and then answer it. And then another team member in the background will type out that answer so it's in text and maintained in the log, so you'll be able to see it. We'll be able to let you know you'll be able to see if you go back and watch the recording of the meeting. In addition, we are inviting you to, of course, join the conversation. Some of you might feel more comfortable being heard, you want to be on screen, you want to talk, have a conversation. That's fantastic. It's a new part of the neighborhood meeting that we're trying. We're trying to replicate the physical environment that we used to have. Some of you may have joined us at our neighborhood meetings a while back on the Fairview Bridge. We've had those for every bridge where work has occurred. And we like that physical connection. And so the ability to have a conversation back and forth, and we're trying to replicate that here. So the way that's going to work is you're going to raise your hand. There's a feature at the top of your screen there that says raise hand, and it'll take a little bit. There's going to be a mic check and a video check. So you'll pop into a new window to do that potentially. And then you can, Nikki will then have you into the room, invite you into the room. And then you can ask your questions. We can have the discussion and response. And then once we're finished, we'll invite the next person in. So I hope that's clear. We're going to jump right in and take it from here. Meanwhile, I'm going to leave the project contact information on the screen just in case there are any additional questions. Nikki, I do see a couple of questions, or at least one question on here. You're muted, Nikki.
Yes, so I think you pretty much answered that. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep,
I think you pretty much answered that from Scott.
Yes.
And
yeah, and Scott, just
Debbie
to clarify,
is, coming in right now.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sounds good.
That's okay. All right. She's going through probably the mic check process, so it just takes a second here.
Sounds good. While she's doing that, I'm going to go back to Scott's question about the auger method. Well, I'm going to, Scott, I think I'm going to go to your first question, which says the auger method you mentioned is much less impactful. With why is that not being used in more locations? So it does have to do with soil conditions, and it does have to do with the water table, as I mentioned. And so they're choosing not to use that. It's consistent with what the city chose, when it constructed the wall. So that's the reasoning behind it. If you feel, and this applies to anybody, if you feel like you have your property has been damaged as a result of the work, there is a claims process. We will absolutely facilitate that, whereby you let us know and we submit your concerns about a claim to the contractor, and then they will reach out to you. We will provide you with their contact information. They have an email address that we will make sure we provide to you. They will ultimately send you a claim form, and you will submit it to them, and then they will go through the process of determining, the working through the claim. They will work through the claims process. So I'm sorry, is Stephanie ready?
I think Debbie is on. Debbie, are you here?
Yes, I'm
here.
here.
Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I missed part of what you were explaining, because when you try and get on, there's a little pause. So you may have already answered this question. One was about the claims process, and you'll email us. So we are dealing directly with the contractor. We're not dealing with the OCTA.
That is correct.
Yeah, with the claims. And
yes.
Then if we have problems with the claims, who do we contact? You
would contact us directly, and we will go back to the contractor and say, hey, we received a call from from the Holtz. Can you give us a status on their claim? Can you please reach out to them, etc. And we have a way to elevate this as well internally. So we can elevate it to OCTA's risk management and ask them to get involved. Typically what they will do, as part of the agreement, as part of the contract, the contractor holds all liability. And so what we would do if our risk management needed to get involved is they would take a report and they would turn around and directly send it to OC405's claims department. They would also contact their insurer, who is Liberty Mutual, and make sure that this is addressed. Again, I want to make it clear that we don't make any decision or any commitment on any decision about the claims process. We facilitate you getting your information to the contractor, and the contractor and its insurance company determine the validity of the claim and make any decision after that.
Okay. And then my other question is, so we have had pile driving before. It wasn't, it was close, but it wasn't this close. Have you, in your experience, ever done 183 piles this close to homes built on concrete slabs? And if so, was there damage to the slab, the plumbing, the walls, etc.?
I don't have that information. I don't have any information about damage caused by pile driving. One of the things that the contractor does, and I think we have this question too, is they have a vibration monitoring. They have vibration monitoring in place. I don't know specifically if there's vibration monitoring going on right now, but they have a report that they use as a guide. There are minimum requirements or minimum thresholds, I should say, or perhaps it's even maximum thresholds, where that they have to make sure their work falls within. I don't know about other. There are definitely locations where people also live as close. We have a similar, actually, I would say probably just about as close up near the McFadden Bridge, where we have some folks who live in a mobile home park who are relatively close. And I don't know, Nikki, you might recall what pre-construction surveys were done up there. Were any done in Driftwood?
Yes, the ones that are the pre-construction surveys are typically done at the contractor's discretion, and it's in their best interest, of course, risk-wise, and they do it within 300 feet of vibratory activity. So pile driving, of course, warrants that. And
typically, I'm just going to jump in.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, typically they do it for bridge pile driving, foundation pile driving. Not that we haven't seen them do it a lot for walls, although I guess they have done some, right, up toward the north end of the project?
Correct.
Okay, so so a mobile home I'm not as familiar with in what they're sitting on and slab, what their foundation is like and how their house is connected to the foundation. So do you have any other examples or any other experience other than mobile home parks?
I don't at all. I'm sorry about that. What we can do though is go back to the contractor, ask them if they're planning to do any surveying in this area. It is at their discretion, but I would always encourage you to take pictures to make sure you're documenting the situation prior to pile driving and post pile driving, and even during pile driving, right? So that you have a good documentation. And then if you feel that there's been damage, then absolutely you've documented that, and you can file a claim and support your claim in that way. But that's the situation. That's the experience we have at this point. It's just I don't know that I don't know the categories necessarily of claims. Most of the claims that we see are for somebody might have a rock hits their windshield on the freeway. The vast majority of things are that way. There has been some property damage. There have been some property damage claims as well. But again, I don't know. We don't hear the results of those, so we don't really have any sense of whether the activity itself is what caused the damage.
All right. So, and then also I wanted to ask about the replacing the landscaping.
Sure. So one of the first questions we struggled with was, hey, there are no landscaping plans for the slope that will be constructed behind your homes once the wall is completed. However, the technical team advised us that if in the course of constructing the wall or any element of the project, landscaping has been removed, then it has to be replaced. So there will be discussions going on between the landscape designer on OCTA's team and the landscape designer on the contractor for what type of landscaping to put in this area. I don't have any sense of what that is at this time, but if you guys have requests of types of things you'd like to see on there, we'd like medium-sized trees, small trees, trees that'll go quickly, things like that. Send them our way. We will convey to the technical team. That is by no means, unfortunately, a guarantee. Caltrans has a very specific palette that they follow, but it's a pretty wide-ranging palette. In addition, I don't know whether they will put trees or not put trees, whether there'll be shrubs, things like that. But we will convey all requests to the technical team.
Okay. And then my last question is for the 183 piles, how long will that take? How long is?
Let me check and see if I've got the schedule information for that. Bear with me.
Well, not just, well, when it starts too, but also, is it going to take a week, 2 weeks? How long is pile driving actually going to be going on behind our homes?
Yeah, that's something we'll have to find out. These piles range from 25 feet in length to 70 feet. It's daytime work, daytime driving work. It just depends on the soil. It depends on, and they've done geotechnical boring in the area, so there's clarity on that. But I'll need to get back to you on the time frame. Let me go back. I think there were 147 piles on the wall across the way, and I think they were all larger piles. And that work has taken approximately 3 to 4 weeks, I think. So I would imagine that it's going to be a similar time frame, probably a little bit longer. And it's a smaller space that they have to work in as well. So we'll have to check on that, Debbie, for you, and we'll of course convey that to everybody who's joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then that was it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, if you could take this slide down for me.
I sure can.
And we do have another question coming in from Tom and Melissa. So they should be coming in here soon if they're not in already. And then we had a few questions that came in on the chat as well. Okay, Tom is coming in right now. He's probably going through the mic check. Would you like to answer some questions in the chat?
Are there any other questions in the chat? Yes, please.
All right, here's one of them.
So Scott, I think you're again about ways to put in the piles. I think that's correct. You're saying hydraulic jacking or vibrating hammer. So that they do vibrate piles in, but that doesn't allow them to vibrate them in. That process won't allow them to get to the depth that they need. So they vibrate piles in to begin the process of pile driving. Hi, Melissa. Is that Melissa?
I can't get on.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Video. Sean. Yeah.
Okay, we heard you for a second, Melissa, but we don't hear you now.
Nikki, can you put Scott's latest question up, please?
Sure.
Okay, that's not the latest one. I'm talking about the one at the very top.
All right, let me look for that.
And one of the questions that Scott asked in there is, are there any remedies? And the claims process is the process. So he's asking here, is there anything that can be done at this point to reconsider the driving method for the next round of pile driving being done so close to our homes? The answer is the design for the wall has been released for construction. The design plans are done and completed. At this time, they aren't able to do a different design for the wall. And the design that's been selected has been signed off by OCTA, by Caltrans, and certified by the designer. So it is there's nothing that we can change at this point. Again, if you do think there's damage to your property as a result of it, we will absolutely facilitate the claims process. And again, please document. So take pictures, take video, whatever it is you think would make the most sense. Let's go and take the next question there. Yep, Josiah says, how tall will the sound wall be from the base of the street to the top of the wall? Okay, so that's a fantastic question. And I always say when anybody says that's a fantastic question, it's because they don't know the answer. So I don't know the answer. I do know that the retaining wall itself is 28 feet tall at its tallest point. That likely is going to be closer to the freeway, right? As you know, Fairview will, the approach on Fairview to the bridge is going to go up. It's going to increase in grade. And so closer to the bridge, closer to where you turn onto the on-ramp, that's going to probably be the 28 foot. That's just the retaining wall. Above that, you've got the wall that protects pedestrians or bicyclists who might want to be, protect them.
I'll just have to type it.
That's okay, Melissa, that's fine. So above that it's not actually a sound wall. It may buffer some of the sound, but it's not considered a sound wall as part of the project. It is a safety wall, right? So that people who are walking along the sidewalk don't fall down the slope there. And I don't have the answer for you on the height of that, but we will take that back to the technical team. I do believe we've answered that previously. I just don't have it memorized, and I apologize for that. Did we get Melissa? We saw her for a little bit.
I think I still see her on here, but she's on mute.
Okay. Well, let's have her leave the room and see if anybody else is up for speaking. If not, type your questions into the chat. Happy to take those. Some of the activity, there's a lot of activity going on across the freeway adjacent to the Wimbledon Glen apartments that many of you have seen. And so there's continual work on that. They're building the retaining walls for the northbound off ramp there, and for the widening of Fairview adjacent to Wimbledon Glen apartments. So it's similar activity that's taking place on your side of the freeway. Charles Holt says, so what is the impact of pile driving in weak soil on our home's foundations? Has that even been considered? So the design would have considered the impact on the surrounding soil. I don't have the specific details, Mr. Holtz, on that. Whether I don't know that they. In fact, I am presuming, since nobody's come onto your private property to do any assessment, that there hasn't been an assessment on the impact specific to your home's foundations. I think there are other factors involved there, but the determination throughout the design process is that it's a feasible method to build the foundation of the wall. And I think what it does is it means you've got to, and we can ask that question, by the way. I don't have a clear answer, obviously, but what we can do is find out from the technical team whether there is any consideration to the surrounding soil, right? I don't know how it would be to the foundation. So Mr. Mobley says, I have a block wall in the back that is directly touching your construction site. And since the pile driving, this wall has begun to crack and crumble. I don't think there's actually been pile driving. There's been excavation and driving soil nails as part of the. Actually, they might have put in some. Now that I think about it, they might have put in some piles for the temporary shoring installation. But if you have any issues, again, it comes to that point of if you think there's been any damage from the project to your personal property, then we get that claim filed and we get it over to 405, OC 405 partners, and they will assess the situation. And they have been good over the last several months about moving quickly to evaluate claims. So we would go to them and get that process started for you. Again, please document to the greatest extent possible.
So we have Scott that's coming in for a question. He should be in a few seconds here. And then I think you've answered everything that's related to the questions that have come in on the chat so far.
Great. While we're waiting for Scott to come in, we'd also appreciate your feedback in the chat on how this is going, if this is working for you. We're going to continue doing virtual meetings like this because of the coronavirus for the foreseeable future. And if these work for you, we'd be happy to do more. Keeping you up to date via the Fairview specific database, email database is also something that we want to do. So I encourage you to sign up for that. But tell us if these kinds of discussions work for you. I think the fact that you do the mic check and the video check, I think that does cause a little bit of a delay. But I like to be able to hear people's voices. I imagine a lot of you lived here when the wall work was being done previously. I think that was back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in that area is when they did the widening and the seismic retrofit on the bridge.
All right, after Scott, Josiah would like to speak. So we're just going to give Scott another couple of seconds here.
Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, is this Josiah?
It's Josiah, yeah.
Hi, Josiah. How are you?
I'm good. So first off, I think this is a great way to communicate, so I appreciate the time. And but my other question was, the old design was quite a tall block wall, and I assume it was considered a sound wall. Was it not?
It was not. It is not a sound wall in the plans.
Okay. So the old one wasn't?
Correct. The old one was not either. It was not considered a sound wall. Did it act to attenuate noise? I'm sure it did. I have no doubt. The wall will not be shorter than the one that was already up there.
Okay, so it won't be shorter, because that was going to be my follow-up question.
No, okay. It will not be shorter. We need to verify that, but in no area or no instance on the project have they ever constructed the wall that they have to rebuild. No place have they done it shorter than the existing. In most cases, it's the same or higher.
Okay, good. Okay. If you can follow up with me on that after, just to make sure, because my backyard is a drop down from that, and people can just potentially, if it wasn't as large, they would basically be able to look back into my backyard and look at what I have to take or whatever. So
I see.
It'd be nice to know.
So you have some privacy concerns.
Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. So yeah, just shoot us an email with your location. We can give you specific information related to the wall height where you are, and then in general, we'll let the group know what the range is for the wall height, if there is a range.
Okay, great. I appreciate it.
Happy to do that. Happy to do that. Yes.
That's all.
Thank you, sir. It looks like Tom and Melissa have submitted their question. Excellent. So it says, will there be a wall joining the Fairview parallel to Boston Way onto the on-ramp on Fairview South on the corner of the intersection? I just recently looked at the plans. It was in preparation for this meeting, and there is some sort of wall there that sort of comes right around the corner. I do not know. There's no number. All of our walls have numbers, but there's something there, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. But we will look at that. So this is basically as you're making the turn from northbound Fairview onto the southbound on-ramp, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? It looks like that's what you're describing. We'll find out what structure is actually going to go there. I did see something on the plans, and we just need to get the specific details from the technical team to tell us what that is. Any other questions in the chat that we have, Nikki?
No, we got everything so far. Scott, his audio wasn't working on his end, so it kept kicking him off. And I told him, he could try again or just write.
Yeah,
write
Scott, we've got time. So whatever. I mean, we're fine. We can see if it works again. Maybe try it without headphones or with headphones. That might work. I don't know. You're also welcome to exit the webinar here and try from your phone, because it'll work from your phone as well.
He did type in a question here.
Okay.
Or wanted a confirmation.
Oh, gotcha. So who do we send requests to for landscaping, trees? Definitely send it to us. We will take that to the construction management team, it will be the project management team in this case, I think, to provide some, we'll give them your information, your requests. I think what we'll try to do also is we'll see if any activity, I think it was mid-April, or late April, that we heard that there would be landscaping, and there wasn't yet a discussion that had happened between the two landscape designers from OCTA side and OC405 side. We'll check to see for an update on that, to see what the status is and see what they're thinking, what they're planning, what they're proposing, and then we'll get back to the group. But send us your requests to 405project@octa.net, as you can see up there on your screen, and we'll go from there. Do we have a menu of trees that I think you mean Caltrans, so we'll approve? There is a document. It's landscaping. It's called a PALM, right? PALM, that has some detail in it. I don't know. I don't really know if it's got sort of a menu of trees, if you will, but we will, and the landscaper designer has to consider take a lot of things into consideration as well. But ultimately, that's sort of the guiding document, because the project has a theme up and down the entire corridor, and that document talks about the aesthetics as well as landscaping. But we will ask for a menu of trees, if you will, ask for what the options are, and really I think what you want to do more importantly is say what are you looking for trees that will mature quickly, that will grow quickly. It's important to note with landscaping, they will not plant mature trees because it's not feasible to keep that vegetation alive for any length of time. You often end up with dead trees or stunted trees. So, Mr. Holtz says, my wife teaches yoga from home so that when they start the driving, she can't work. Is there some way you can arrange accommodations during the heavy work days so she can make a living? Yeah, I think that's a great question, a great issue. So we have a temporary lodging policy that's part of the project. And this is where the contractor pays for a hotel, a night stay. The contractor has established agreements with a number of Marriott properties. They're typically Residence Inn or can't remember, but a couple of different kinds of your standard Marriott properties throughout the project corridor. There's one in a couple in Costa Mesa. The policy itself is focused on how do we provide temporary lodging for a nighttime activity that is just too loud and untenable. Remember that all of the activities that occur at night have to be within a certain threshold, noise threshold. That's why we do pile driving for the day, during the day, for example, because you don't have that same requirement during the day. But so the policy is organized around the idea of a night's stay here or a couple nights stay there. It's 1 or 2 nights. It's not, a week or 2 week or 3 week or 4 weeks at a time. And so we're a little bit constrained by that, but we're trying to be as flexible as possible and figure out ways to deal with it. So if we know that there's pile driving that's going to occur for, say, 4 weeks, and it would be helpful to have a few days combined together to alleviate some of to give you a break from that work, we'll find a way to make that happen. One of the questions that came up with Ms. Holtz was the idea of, with your wife, was the idea of accommodating pets. And the difficulty that we have with pets, we will find a way to accommodate them. But the difficulty that we have with pets is the contractor is not liable for any damage that pets may do to hotel properties. So we have to figure out a way to deal with that and work around that. But we can. But in general, yes, we can provide temporary lodging. We have to be somewhat limited with it. But if it would help to give you a respite from the work, then we will absolutely do whatever we can to make that happen. Scott mentions that the trees would be ideal to have trees that block visually and also offer noise and wind reduction. So there is a prescribed use for landscaping on the project. It is meant to address the visual impacts of the project, and all of this is in the environmental document. Trees, vegetation do not in any way address noise, so they won't plant trees or use trees to do that. Caltrans's research and analysis shows that trees and vegetation don't do anything to address noise, don't serve as a noise attenuation tool. That's why they have sound walls in place. So they won't look at it from that perspective. But of course, we do know that trees, as they mature, can provide privacy, and even, they can try to plant a little bit larger, a young tree to, that will help address the privacy concerns as well. So, for Josiah, that may, Mr. Morley, that may assist in your situation, but not to serve as noise reduction. Perhaps to serve as wind reduction, though. I know some of you who may have been in Orange County for a long time, like I have, know about the eucalyptus stands that were planted to be windbreaks. You can see some of those still throughout Irvine. Any more questions? Again, it would be great to hear from you in the text, in the chat, if you're comfortable with this way of communicating. If this works for you, it is the second best thing we can do rather than being there physically. Again, we're going to hold off on those in-person meetings for the time being, and that's expected to continue for a while. So if this is working for you, let us know. Again, the meeting is, yeah, exactly. And if it's not working for you, let us know.
All right, we have a few more questions coming in.
Okay, sure. So Debbie's asking, since this is city property, does the city have any say on the landscaping? That's a great question. I think we have to, I don't have an answer for you. The city certainly can, I'm not going to speak for the city. If I'm the city, though, I'm certainly going to say, hey, we would like to have this type of landscaping on the slope if possible. So there are always discussions that are happening. We're in regular contact with the city and with city staff on this. So if you would like to convey your opinion and your desire on what kind of landscaping to the city, please feel free to do that as well. Just know that it will be within the context of whatever Caltrans provides.
And the city did approve, certain elements of the aesthetic plan for the project. It may
Right.
not have been the landscaping elements. I mean, yeah, the landscaping elements, but there were other elements that are in their property or right of way that they have to maintain after the project is done. So I think that also is, where the jurisdiction falls as well. All right, we have another question from Tom and Melissa.
Yes, regarding the wall at the intersection of Fairview to the southbound Fairview on-ramp, will it be a wall? Prior to construction, it was a gate. I don't know the answer to that question. We will have to talk to the technical team. Again, I saw something written on the plans. We have a map, 6 pages long, or super long, extensive. It covers the entire corridor that shows us the location of walls. And I saw a notation for something right at this turn that you're talking about. I don't know what exactly it is, so we'll need to ask the technical team what the plans are. If it's city property and it was a gate, it was probably for access for maintenance. Is what I presume, and it may be that they, if it was there initially, it likely will have to be the same thing to be restored. So we'll have to check into that. But great question, and really appreciate that. These types of questions, that's the importance of me for having meetings like this, because in a general, I think some folks, some of you may have joined us at the neighborhood meeting. There's no way we would be able to really know about these types of questions at that large a meeting. So it's much better for this. I find a little bit more intimate. It makes us, it provides us a great opportunity to get a good sense of, not just what the community is interested in, but what the neighborhood is interested in. So I hope that that is helpful. So it looks like we have a little bit of homework to do on our end to try to get you some answers to some questions. Again, please sign up for the Fairview specific database. Anybody who signed up, you had to submit your email for this meeting, so we will be able to get your responses to those questions. But if we have a meeting in the future that you aren't able to attend and you have a question you want to send us and you think your neighbors might be interested in, that's why we really want why we want to utilize the interchange specific database. And we're setting those up for all of the interchanges. So if you're interested in something going on up at Harbor Boulevard, we'll have a database for that as well. South of the project, more toward Bear Street, not planning anything at the moment, but we would probably include those in the Fairview one. Another portion of the project that I want to make you aware of that's coming, it's toward the end of the project, but that is the connector. There will be a connector between the 73 and the 405, the express lanes. So that'll be a direct connector between the two freeways. That is more toward the end of Charleston, so people down there might be interested in it more than you, but that's coming toward the end of the project. So that's another major structure that's happening. Obviously not as noisy, not as close to you as the Fairview Bridge, but still relevant to you. We've come to the end. Do we have any more people waiting to get in the room? No. Okay. So we want to say thank you. Thanks for your time. Please, again, provide us feedback if you'd like, on an individual level about how this worked for you, and let us know if there are any other questions you might have, anything you want to ask. We're available as often as you need. I will say that it's about a half dozen of us, Nikki, me, Asia, Joey, Anna, and a couple others. We answer and respond to questions for the entire 16-mile project corridor. And if you think about it, that's really 32 miles because we have residents and businesses on both sides, as you know. So we are working a day in and day out to try to make sure that everybody gets the information they need. We do our best to try to respond to questions as quickly as possible. If you're not hearing from us, certainly nudge us. That's not a problem. Please feel free to email us and say, hey, do you have a status on this? Haven't heard back from you guys and really would like to know. And, just reach out to us. And we really appreciate your patience. I've lived next to freeway construction myself. I know how difficult this must be, and I wish I could make it go away more quickly for you guys. I'm sorry that you're having to deal with the frustrations of this, but hopefully we'll get out of your hairs as quickly as possible. So thank you again.
We have one more quick question from Josiah. I think
Absolutely.
A little more clarification on the connector.
Sounds good. Yeah, so another project at the end, the connector. So it's not a project, it's part of this project. So this project includes the creation of the 405 express lanes. And these are going to be 2 toll lanes in each direction on the 405, just like you see on the 91 freeway. That was not part of the original project. The original project was to add, I believe, general purpose lanes in each direction, regular lanes. This project, just for a little background, is part of Measure M. Measure M was approved by almost 70% of voters back in 2006. That was Measure M is a half-cent sales tax for transportation improvements. It is a continuation of, it's actually Measure M2. We've rebranded it as OC Go because LA County took Measure M recently when they had a vote on a transportation tax. So ours is now OC Go, but it's Measure M2. It was a continuation of a tax that started back in the early 90s, and it has a finite end date. It extends from 2011 to 2041. It is an ordinance that has very specific projects in it related to freeways, streets and roads, transit, and the environment. So there is environmental mitigation as part of Measure M to mitigate the impacts of projects on the environment. That was a huge selling point for the environmentalist community. So that project includes the widening of the 405 between the 55 and the county line, the 605, right? That's known as Project K in Measure M. All of this documentation is available on our website, octa.net/OCGo. You can find all the details there. Well, this Measure M project included general purpose lanes. However, Caltrans is our partner in this process. They are the owner operator of the freeway system. And they said, we would like to add another carpool lane to this project. And ultimately, we believe we're going to need to manage those lanes as toll lanes because we are under a state and federal mandate to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the best way we can do that is to manage the lanes on the freeway. And we do that in the middle of the freeway by adding HOV lanes. And we manage them even further by making them toll lanes. So they came to us as part of this project development process. And what's important to remember is Caltrans is the lead agency on the environmental phase of a project. So they're the ones who ultimately determine what the preferred alternative is that will be selected and constructed. There was a lot of back and forth between OCTA board members and Caltrans about this. And we finally got to a solution that said, okay, well, a little bit more background. We said we're going to move forward with the general purpose lanes. They said, fine, we'll come in afterward and build the new HOV lanes. And our board ultimately said, well, we don't want to do that to the residents of Orange County. We don't want to have a 5-year project that will implement the general purpose lanes. And then after that, have another 5-year project that will again tear up the freeway for HOV lanes. And ultimately, Caltrans came to the table and said, we will give some money to this, and we want them to be toll lanes, express lanes. So the money that they supplied to build the toll lanes, to build the express lanes, is not enough for the cost. So what we ended up with was a project that consisted of adding a regular lane, also known as a general purpose lane, on the outside. So we're adding one additional lane throughout the entire project area, or actually from Euclid to the 605. And then we're adding the express lanes in the center of, so one additional lane in the center of the freeway that will be added to the HOV lane, the current carpool lane, and they will be combined to be the express lanes. We came to that knowing, though, that we did not want to use Measure M tax funds to pay for the express lanes. So we use some federal and state funds, some of them from Caltrans, and we have what is known as a TIFIA loan, which is a transportation infrastructure loan. We secured a very good rate for that loan, and the debt payment for that loan and the operations and maintenance cost for the express lanes are all covered by tolls. So there is no local tax money going in to pay for the cost of the construction or maintenance and operations of those lanes. That said, there are people who will take those lanes and they are paying for the use of it through the tolls, right? What we have found on the 91 freeway is that people actually love the toll lanes. It saves them time. Right now, if you're going through the corridor during rush hour and you're using the HOV lane, it'll take you probably about a half hour to travel that length of time. Once the toll lanes are implemented, it'll be 15 minutes. The general purpose lanes, it takes about an hour to travel the corridor during rush hour, typical rush hour. That will be brought down to 30 minutes because don't forget, we're adding a new general purpose lane. So we're adding capacity both for carpoolers and even non-carpoolers who want to take the express lanes, because you can be a solo driver and pay to go on those express lanes. And we're adding capacity in the regular lanes for those people who don't want to pay the toll. And the connector that's being built between the 73 and the 405 express lanes is that structure I was talking about. So it'll basically be a carpool connector, but it'll be a carpool connector into the toll lanes on the 405. And of course, out of them if you're going south on the freeway. So that was a long way around to the clarification to your question. I hope that helped. Debbie asks, where will the access be for the toll lanes? Great question. So one of the items, if you look under the files, you'll see that we have the express lanes FAQ and the express lanes access points map. So that tells you where the access points are. It will not be near Fairview. The access, and actually, I don't have the access map available to me right this second, but if you open it up, if you download it and open it up, you'll be able to see where those points are. There intermediate locations throughout the project corridor. So between the 73 and the county line, there are 2 intermediate locations in each direction where you can enter and exit the express lanes. And it's to allow people, ingress and egress to, so they aren't just funneled through like you are on the 91. You have the ability to get out. If you're on the 73 and you want to get off, to head to your house, you'll of course still have the exit at Fairview, the exit at Bear, things like that. So that'll be available to you. Any other questions?
I don't see any on the chat, and we don't have any requests to speak at the moment.
Well, all right. I'd like to wrap it up then and say thank you. I'm going to pitch that database again for Fairview specific items. We will hold more of these meetings in the future as we move toward the end of the year, toward the next phase. We will have as we move to stage 2 for the bridge itself. We will certainly have a meeting, another neighborhood meeting. That'll be a little bit larger. We only contacted about 3 dozen folks right around your neighborhood for this particular meeting. And, we had probably a handful, probably about 12 dozen or so folks who joined us for this, which we really appreciate. But we'll have a larger meeting for the traffic shift to the next phase. And then, if there's some major activities coming up, as we move, we'll of course continue to provide you information through postcards or potentially flyers. We may get back to doing flyers, but we'll do that and through the project specific database for when pile driving is coming up for the wall behind your homes, again, 569. As all the major activities, we'll do our best to make sure we provide you information. If you have a question, contact us, let us know. If we think that's going to be something that the entire community would be interested in, we'll provide that to the entire database along, who sign up along Fairview. We're going to be doing another one of these meetings for folks across Fairview from you. That'll be somewhat down the line a little bit. So we see this as a great opportunity. We hope you've enjoyed it. We certainly have. And just thank you for your time and thank you for your patience. Hope you all have a good night.